And tonight we have John Lear on the line, folks. Um, John, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. I have a question right off the bat. Someone sent a question asking, "What is up with the second son?"
I haven't heard. You mean one in addition to the one we see?
Yes.
That's BS. That there's no second son.
Okay. No second son. All right. I mean, you would be the guy to know. I mean, you're well versed in the extraterrestrial world, and the things of that.
The sun is so fantastic. People don't know anything about it. They think it's hydrogen burning. It's not. What you see is just a cover of fire, but there's at least 40 civilizations that live inside the sun, and no, it's not hot. It's a normal temperature. And there's all kinds of really bizarre things that go on. Now, the sun actually makes all the planets, and there's 40 planets in our solar system. We're told there's 9,
Right.
but actually there's 40 of them, and they go way out into in our solar system, which is much, much bigger than we're told. And the way they hide some of those planets is with gigantic mirrors.
Yes.
And they have the mirrors set so that we, when we look, we just see outer space. We don't see those planets. But all planets come from the sun. When the sun is put into action there, it starts creating planets. And the planets come out. As a matter of fact, there was born about 2 years ago. The sun was pregnant and born a planet about the size of Earth. NASA didn't say too much about it, but there was pictures of it. And it came out, and it's orbiting around the sun now. And as the planets get older, they go farther out in orbit. And like I say, the sun is not hot. You remember, I don't know if you're old enough to remember when NASA used to tell us that the space vehicles used to turn while in orbit so that they wouldn't get too hot on one side.
Oh. Yeah, I do remember that. So there's
of course, they don't do that anymore because there is no heat coming from the sun. There is no heat coming from the sun, and we're told that it's a reason Mercury is so hot is because it's the closest to the sun.
Right.
It's not. Mercury is the same temperature as the Earth, and the way that the temperatures work on different planets is the atmosphere of that particular planet, whichever one it is, modifies the electromagnetic wave that comes out of the sun to create the proper temperature for the planet. Now, we're told that Pluto was the farthest planet out, and it's cold enough to freeze an Eskimo.
Yes.
But actually, it's 72 degrees, the same time as Earth, and the atmosphere is what modifies the electromagnetic wave that comes from the sun. It's not easy.
Really? So, I mean, then what about like when people like Neil deGrasse or Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson say that there may be a star that goes supernova and will be in front of a gamma ray blast or something? Is anything like that realistic?
Neil is an idiot. I just don't know how a guy like that can get as far as he has. I looked on the New York bestseller time list, and I think he's dropped to number 8 with his book Physics for People in a Hurry. It's physics for people who don't want to know anything, because he says so much bullshit in that book that it's unfortunate. He's trying to sell someone. One of the things he tries to sell is the fact that there was a Big Bang.
Yes.
And that the universe started 19 billion years ago, and it was actually as small as an atom. That's all bullshit. universe, it had no beginning and it has no ending, and it's so big I can't even. I try to figure out ways to tell people how big our universe is, but if you can imagine our universe was the size of a grain of sand, then imagine that a grain of sand with all the grains, all the sands on all the beaches, on all the Earth, and all the other planets in the universe. Uh, that's how big our universe, is. It's just unbelievably small, and there's so many more universes. There's not only more universes, but there's more dimensions. We're only aware of 3 dimensions,
Right.
and when we pass on, we go into the 4th dimension, which some people call heaven. But if you have a concept of heaven, just multiply that exponentially by 1,000 times, and that's how nice it is. If people had any idea how great it was to be in heaven, they'd sure be acting a lot more with integrity, without envy, without hate, without greed, so that when they pass away, they could stay there in the 4th dimension. But what happens is when you die, you get about 45 minutes to meet all the old friends of all the lives you've previously lived, and we've all lived hundreds of different lives. This is just another one here on Earth, and the reason we're here on the prison planet is because we messed up in our last life, and we're here to learn how to live with integrity, without envy, without hate, without greed. And when we pass away, we get, after we meet or a few of the friends we've known in our many hundreds of lives, we go for a life review. And a life review is where they take you into a room and they show you recorded in 3D movie color, HDTV, all of your life, all the wonderful, loving things you did in your life, and then they show you all the nasty things you did in your life, and they have in full color movie the nasty things that you did, things that you thought that nobody would ever find out. And they show you all this, and based on those movies, the good and the bad, is whether you have to come back to Earth and spend more time learning how to live with integrity, without envy, hate, or greed, or whether you've been a good enough boy or girl to stay there in the 4th dimension. And if you get to stay there, of course, you're living, it's so wonderful and happy, and you feel so good, and it's just fantastic feeling. But then you do that for a couple lifetimes in the 4th dimension, and then if you feel like it, you can go on to the 5th dimension. And people say, well, how many dimensions are there? And actually, there's infinite dimensions that go on forever. So if we can hardly imagine the 4th dimension or 5th dimension, there's no explaining how many, what the infinite dimensions are like.
So what are dimensions 1 and 2 then? If we're experiencing the 3rd dimension right now, what is dimension 1 and 2? Or dimension
There's
0?
One would just be a line, 2 would be a moving line, and 3 would be the 3 dimensions where the line has form.
Gotcha.
And I got a question, John. Somebody, a viewer emailed me and they wanted to know why it's just the people on this planet not being informed about what's really outside of this little planet that we live on. Why are they telling us something else?
Business. It's none of our business right now. We're here to learn how to live with integrity, without envy, hate, or greed, and our hands are full learning how to do that. If they were to tell us, and actually that's true, we don't know anything. As a matter of fact, we don't know 99.99% of what's going on out there. We don't know it, and we can't see it. But if we were, we would be absolutely shocked and enthralled about how much stuff is going on out there. But we have our hands full learning how to live with integrity, without envy, hate, or greed. So they don't bother us with telling a lot of stuff that's going on. Now, there are some people that do know what's going on, but they're not allowed to talk. Sometimes they don't feel like talking. But, there's a couple of people in the heads of countries that know a little bit more than us. Not much more, but a little bit more, but they keep it secret. Now, there's a lot of people that have been taken to the moon. Now, in 1956, Howard Menger wrote a book called Outer Space to You, and he talked about being taken to the moon. And they took him there for 2 weeks. They picked him up, I think, in around Los Angeles area. And what they did is they orbited the moon for a week. And the reason they did that is because the moon has a pressure much lower than Earth. They have a breathable atmosphere, and the gravity is 70% that of Earth, not 1/6 that NASA tells you. And so you have to decompress for about a week, and you do that in orbit around the moon, so that when you land on the moon, that you don't have any problems breathing or existing in the pressure they have on the moon. And then when you get on the moon, you spend about a week there, and they show you all the fantastic things that are there, all the fantastic scenery and the canyons that are 5 times as steep as the Grand Canyon, and all the beautiful sights and industry that's going on. And they took him for a week, and when he got back, he wrote a book called From Outer Space to You. He became an informant to the Pentagon, and of course told them what was going on, and they knew what was going on, and that's part of the reason why they faked the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo missions. Many of those never went. The Apollo missions certainly didn't go. We didn't go to the moon.
We didn't go to the moon.
There were so many pictures that were phony. For instance, the daytime color of the sky on the moon is a saffron yellow, but according to NASA, all those pictures showed a black sky with no stars, which is just phony baloney beyond all belief. There's a program on TV called Adam Tells You, or what's the name of that program? Adam Tells You the Truth or something. And he's always exposing some issue. And the other day he had a program saying that the moon conspiracy was BS.
What?
And he was going to prove it. And he used 2 issues. One was the shadows taken by the alleged cameras on the moon, and they were all straight, all the same angle, which is true. Because when they faked the moon pictures, some of the pictures were so close to the cameras that the shadows were straight. But he goes on to say that if that was faked, they would need 1,000,000 billion candle power light to do that. It was just stupid. The other thing he said was that there was a radar reflector that the astronauts put on the moon, and I think it was about 14 by 20 inches or something like that they just put on the ground and propped it up. And supposedly we have a electronic machine which measures the difference or the distance from the Earth to the moon, very, very down to the closest centimeter. But the reason that's bullshit is because if we were to send a laser point of light to the moon, when it got to the moon, it would be at least 4 kilometers in diameter. Now, if 4 kilometers in diameter, how in the heck is it going to figure out what is reflecting from the moon with that little teeny 12-inch by 12-inch reflector? It's just nonsense. Just total nonsense. So I quit watching Adam Tells the Truth or whatever it is because that really blew my mind that he could be so dishonest trying to sell something like that.
Well, what did you say about John about the people trying to sell the flat Earth theory again? That the Earth is
I
flat.
just don't get it.
Uh-oh. No.
My valuable time watching their best movie on the Earth flat, and I listen to their nonsense. And of course, as soon as the guy who was the host of it says, "Here, I want to talk to my fellow Christians." Well, first of all, I'm not a fellow Christian. That's all bullshit. But anyway, because he said that, I thought, well, he must be talking to somebody else and he's not talking to me. But I listened to the whole 2 hours and 41 minutes, and I'm telling you, he had so many things wrong. There wasn't one issue. As a matter of fact, when I sat down to listen to the flat earth argument, I was ready for them to tell me one or two things, maybe even three things, that I really could not explain. But it's bullshit. I could explain everything that they saying was nuts. And yeah, it's too bad. I don't know what the problem is with that, or who started, or why they started it. But it's absolute, total, unadulterated bullshit.
Yeah. But there's a lot of young people buying into this nonsense because everything has been so debased. Everybody lies from every angle, and a lot of these young people are like, "Yeah, when I look up at the star or at the sky when the sun has a few clouds, I see the sun rays going a certain direction, right?" So, you heard
Yeah.
this, and it's like, come on, guys. Come on. We are on a globe. That's not a conspiracy that we should be dwelling on.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I can certainly understand their point of view because I'm 75 years old and I've been around the world so many times in a Lear jet and on a Boeing 707 that, and I never fell off the end. And so I know the world is a sphere, but there's a lot of people that haven't been around the world, and they're going to believe this nonsense about the Earth being flat, which is just totally ridiculous. I don't know why they started that or what it's all about, but it's pure, unadulterated bullshit.
Now, going back to the Christian thing, how do we reconcile ancient Christian, basically prophecy saying the state of Israel will return to the world? Because up until 1948, the state of Israel did not exist, and let alone with them moving the actual capital of Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Have you heard anything on the back door about all of that action?
I have not.
Okay.
But Israel is certainly a problem. If people ask what's going on in Syria, and I say, look, if there's a problem anywhere in the Middle East, you can be sure that Israel's behind it, because their only job is to create problems, and basically what they're trying to do with the 9 major companies in the Middle East, major countries in the Middle East, is to split them and to make them fight with each other internally, so that they can't present a strong defense or a strong air force or a strong army. So what they do is each country they foment problems with religions. Of course, some are Muslim and some are other religions, and so they get those guys to fighting with each other. And there's different political philosophies, and they get those people fighting each other. And what they're trying to do is undermine the integrity of each country so that it can mount an air force or an army that might be a threat to Israel itself. Now, in 1979, Israel came up with a plan called Yinon, Y-I-N-O-N. And what that plan was to make the U.S. believe that Muslim and Muslim countries were a threat to the United States. And the way they did that is they planned the 9/11 disaster where
I heard about
they hit
that.
with the 2 or 3, buildings 1 and 2 were allegedly hit by an airplane. That was so much bullshit. I can't believe it. But all that was for the Israel was trying to make us believe that those were Muslims flying those airplanes, and they were against the U.S. and everything we stand for, and they wanted us to go into the Middle East and attack all of those countries, which we did.
Yes.
We started out with Afghanistan, then we went to Iraq. Now we're, thinking about going to attacking Iran, and it's all at the behest of Israel. Israel just causes problems all the time. So, like I say, we don't have to worry about that because our only worry is ourselves. We can't change anybody else. We can't change the world. We can only change ourselves, and we're here to learn to live our lives with integrity and without envy, hate, or greed. And there's a good book if you have time to get on the web. It's called The War on Terror, and it's by Christopher Bollyn, Bollyn, and it's a short book, but it tells you the exact truth about where the War on Terror came and who dreamed it up and why they dreamed it up.
But
it's a pretty good book.
But John, how can it be possible for the majority of humanity to live life with integrity and without envy if you have a boot on your neck?
It's not. It's just impossible for a few of us to do it, and that's what we're here to do. The rest of the guys will just keep recirculating. Many of the people on Earth will just keep coming back here because they have no hope of learning how to live with integrity and without envy, hate, or greed.
Wow.
We're the lucky ones because we do understand it, and we're going to try and do our best. But not everybody will be able to.
Wow.
Now, another viewer sent me an email, and they were asking, like, what's the process of getting chosen to actually go to the moon to work there and all the manufacturing and the other stuff that goes on the moon? How do, like, you get chosen to do that?
No, the people that live on the moon are the ones that make the selection, and sometimes they select military people, sometimes they select scientists, sometimes they just select the man in the street, and I don't know how they make that selection, but there's been over 100,000 people taken in the last 100 years to the moon for these 2-week trips, and of course, the people don't say anything about it because they know that people would say, "Oh, you're nuts! You've been drinking. You haven't been to the moon." So there's no worry about them spilling the beans. But there's a new website called Bruce Says All. That's BruceSaysAll, Bruce Says All, and you can find that website.com, or you can find it on YouTube. And what it is Bruce Swartz has found a way. He started out with a 12-inch telescope, and now he's working with a 14-inch telescope.
Yes.
And what he's done is he's figured a way to penetrate the hologram that covers the moon. Now, when we look up at the moon at the night or the daytime, whenever we see it, we're not seeing the moon. We're seeing a hologram that's covering the actual moon. And what he's done with his telescope is figured out a way to penetrate that hologram, and I just made about 14 different pictures of his videotapes to put on my wall because they're so spectacular. And I'll tell you how spectacular they are. My wife, who usually doesn't believe any of this stuff, came and said, "What are those buildings?" And I said, that's Bruce's pictures of the moon looking through the hologram. And she said, "That's fantastic." And then she's been telling everybody that comes into my dam, look at what my husband has. These pictures of the buildings on the moon. And it is fantastic. So go to YouTube, Bruce Says All, and look at some of the pictures, their videotapes. And he has this 12-inch telescope that he took all the original ones in, and he actually credits me with him finding those because he said he would hear my stuff about there being people on the moon, and he wanted to find out if it was true. And by God, it was true.
Yeah.
And so now he's out there showing all these pictures. He's done a fantastic job and invested a huge amount of money in figuring out how to do this. But his pictures, when you look at these things, as he's taking a video directly from the telescope that he's looking through, it's fantastic. I mean, there is so much stuff going on the moon. He has a particular videotape that was taken of the Sinus Iridum, which is in the north part of the moon, in an area that I know pretty well because I've looked at the area quite a bit. And I'll tell you, the amount of buildings and highways and passageways and tunnels, and it's fantastic. So take a look when you have time and see what's really on the moon. It'll really piss NASA off.
Now, do you have any telescope or any optical devices that a person just getting into this could possibly purchase, or do you have anything you recommend?
No, I have an 8-inch telescope, Celestron. It's about 40 years old, and I've enjoyed it looking at the moon and the stars and a lot of stuff out there. But you really can't see that much with an 8-inch telescope. Even with a 14-inch telescope, people would say, well, why can't we see the people on the moon? Well, of course, the resolution of a telescope, 14 inches in diameter, is not enough to see people on the moon. Now, you say, well, what about Mount Palomar? That's 200 inches. Wouldn't that be able to see? And we say, yeah, absolutely. But guess what? It's all secret. You go to the Palomar or the Lake Observatory or any of those huge telescopes and ask them, can we see the moon photos? And oh no, they're put away for a few years while we check the accuracy and stuff like that.
Now, do you know anything about the Catholic telescope, the Lucifer Observatory in Hawaii?
No.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay.
Now, there's a telescope in Chicago called the Yerkes Telescope. That's Yerkes. And about 3 months ago, they have had a website for many years. And on their website about 3 months ago, they posted a picture of the moon, which they called that said it was the supermoon taken in April 10th, 2009 or 2010, and it had a picture of the moon. And this was on the front of their website, and I looked at that picture and I said, that's not 2009. That picture was taken in 1946 by the Lear Observatory. And the reason I know is because it clearly shows an explosion 110 miles to the northwest of Endymion, which is a crater towards the north part of the moon. And the explosion lifted the dust and debris that they were exploding up to the top of the atmosphere. And what this tells us is, number one, the moon does have an atmosphere.
Yes.
And number two, it probably is breathable, or you wouldn't be able to hold the smoke together. It would just dissipate. But here's a clear picture of how it holds together. So I posted on my Facebook page the fraud that Yerkes was talking about. And within 6 hours, they totally changed their entire website. There was no pictures of the moon. All the pictures of the Yerkes Observatory were inside the Yerkes Observatory, and pictures of the telescope, but no pictures of the moon. I caught them dead to rights. I caught them lying through their teeth. And the same thing a few weeks later with National Geographic. I found they put that picture of the moon taken in 1946 by the Lake Observatory. They put that same thing on the head of their website. and then they had to take it down too. So there's something, there. I have heard about various people that work at the very large observatories, and they've been told, don't look at the moon for the next couple of months. And I don't know why they're being told that, but some people who have been photographing, videotaping the moon 24/7 have found out that there's obviously something going on with the image of the moon that we see. There's a wave that goes back and forth and up and down on the moon that you can clearly see in these videos, and that's the wave that carries the holographic image.
Oh my God.
And we're not supposed to know that anything's up there. But if you look at those Bruce Says All on YouTube, you're going to see there's some fantastic stuff.
Now, John, have you ever heard of a guy named L.A. Mazzoli or L.A. Mazzola?
Yeah, he's a great guy, and he's the one that started telling me that I first heard talk about the Kandahar giant, and did a lot of research into that. And I believe exactly what he says. I believe there was a Kandahar giant, but I've talked to people who I greatly respect who know a lot about giants, and they don't believe it. And
What?
That's okay. That doesn't bother me. They certainly know more about it than I do, but I've listened to enough interviews with people who were there and saw the Kandahar giant that I believe that's true.
Well, I
So
mean,
how they got there and how we've missed it all these years, but the giants were 15 feet tall. They were very agile. You would think that
Red
somebody
hair.
15 feet tall would had red beards, red hair, and were very agile. They could dance around like a ballet dancer.
Yep.
They were so quick on their feet. And the original secret team, military team that went in there, the giant stabbed one of them with this huge spear that he got,
Wow.
and he held him up in the air. And all the rest started shooting at him, and they weren't having an effect until the commander of the unit said, shoot high for the face, high for the face. And they finally killed it, and they called into Kandahar, which is a city in the south of Afghanistan, where they were based out of, and told them what was going on, and they sent in I think it was a CH-47 helicopter. And of course, the helicopter couldn't land because this is in the mountains, and there were just steep areas, and the place, the cave where the giant came out of, was just along a little very thin trail, no place for a helicopter to land. So what they did is they dropped a net, and they asked the military team that was on the ground to put the giant inside the net, which they did, and secured him. And then they flew it back to Kandahar, and then they flew it to Frankfurt, Germany, and then from there it probably went to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And I have a little story about Wright-Patterson Air Force Base on my face page on Facebook. Somebody came on and said, I worked for 38 years or for 38 years as a scientist with Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and I'm willing to tell you, I'm willing to answer any question you have. So,
yeah.
So I said, okay, well, I can't think right off of the question, but I'll tell you, I'll start off with this. Tell me how many levels and how deep the area is underneath Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where they keep all the saucers, the weird stuff, and the aliens and all that stuff. And he came back and he said, well, I would like to do that, but do you have any way to prove it was there? I said, I typed in, I said, look, I don't have any time for any more of your bullshit, and I blocked him. And of course, I haven't heard from him since.
That's crazy.
When you was on special report, you broke it down, the relationship between America and Russia, okay? And the reason why I bring this up, When Trump attacked Syria, a lot of two people specifically called me personally to ask me my opinion, and I told them, I'm like, according to John Lear, Russia and America have always been friends. Russia will have no response to our provocation in Syria. And what did Russia say 2 days afterwards? If America does it again, they're like, if America does it again, we're going to respond.
Right.
John has told us the game. John has told us the game. This has all
Yeah.
been a
Yeah.
make-believe scenarios for some people to get very, very rich
Yep.
in the military-industrial complex and in NASA and other organizations. They got a lot of rich off of our what? Fear. Our collective fear of being annihilated.
Right, and that's where they get money for scams like the F-35. I mean, it's been in production for, it's been around trying to build it for 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's hundreds of billions of dollars over budget. It doesn't do anything that it was supposed to do. It was supposed to replace the A-10 Warthog.
Yes.
It did such a poor job of that they actually had to put the Warthog back into service because it does so much better than the F-35. There's nothing that the F-35 does like it's supposed to. It's just a scam, and I think the price is now over $2 billion for one F-35. It's just insane.
That's about as bad as
And,
Harry Reid's handout. That's about as bad as Harry Reid's handout out there in Las Vegas.
Yeah, Reid is such a disappointment. He's been such an asshole over the years. And, my father, William P. Lear Sr., was the first major donor to Reid's campaign when he was running for the Senate. And Reid did a couple things for my family, but he really didn't help me. In 2005, I was late renewing my gold. What do they call them? Where you get where you map out an area, claims.
Yes.
My claims, and so I had put an amazing amount of money into rebuilding the Gold Butte Treasure Rock gold mine, and because I was late sending in my $10, they took it away from me, and
No
so
way.
I put together a 200-page book of exactly what I'd done there and why I believe that they should give me a chance to slide or to pay late on the $10, and he just couldn't have been bothered. What he did is he took the 200 book page I sent, and sent it to Reno BLM, and of course they didn't do anything with
Right.
it. So it was a real disappointment. But now that Reid is retired as a senator, his big problem is where is he going to get a free lunch?
Yes.
Because for the last 30 years, as a senator, he's been getting a free lunch. But now that he's no longer a senator, where's the free lunch going to come from?
Where?
He's certainly not going to pay for it. So what he did is he cooked up this absolutely insanely stupid program where he's going to be Mr. UFO, he's going to be Mr. Disclosure, and he's going to prove all the stuff that the Pentagon's been hiding. And of course the Pentagon's not going to say anything about it, but they gave him $22 million to go ahead and be Mr. Disclosure because they know that he's not going to find out anything, and they want people to get off their backs about disclosing anything. Now, they've been collecting information for 70 years. They have at least 70 different sizes of extraterrestrial craft. They have at least 100 different types of aliens, which they have on in ice cold storage. They have they are doing business with at least 4 different types of extraterrestrials who have given them all kinds of information, and the deal with the ETs, they say, look, we'll give you this information that you can use for yourselves, but we need you to help keep our
power.
Keep it a secret from the public.
Yes.
And so that's why the government doesn't say anything, because they don't want to lose all their cool stuff.
Right.
Now, they aren't going to share any of their cool stuff with us, but that's our problem. But now Harry Reid comes along, and he says, I'm going to be Mr. Disclosure, and give me $22 million, and I'll give it to my friend Bob Bigelow. And Bigelow's story was he's been interested in UFOs ever since he was a little kid.
Yeah.
And he's been a very, very successful realtor and builder. He has billions of dollars. And what happened is when Bob Lazar was working up at S4 and then decided not to work there anymore, he financed Bob Lazar in a joint company called Zeta Reticuli 2. And what they were going to do is they put together a small laboratory that was over by McCarran Airport, and Bigelow bought a lot of the equipment and everything, and they were going to do all kinds of cool stuff. But Bob doesn't really get along with too many people, and Bigelow's idea was Bob was going to be in that laboratory working all day long, and he would be able to bring his friends over and say, this is my scientist who working on cool stuff, and here's what he developed today. Whereas Bob's idea of their joint venture was he was going to take all the cool stuff over to his house and do what he wanted instead of what Bigelow wanted.
That
so
would work.
It only lasted about a year, and I posted the original corporate papers that they filed on my page on Facebook the other day. But Bigelow then was approached by the military. Now, the one thing that the military is scared to death of is somebody who has an interest in UFOs and has lots of money. Yes. That really bothers them. So what they did is they went to Bigelow and dressed up in their uniforms with all their medals and went into his office and told him, look, Mr. Bigelow, we understand that you have an interest in space and stuff, and they said we have so many projects that you could help us on. Not only with your mind, but with your money. But we want you to know that we don't believe any of that UFO stuff, so you're going to have to forget about that. So Bigelow, thinking he was going to get on the inside of the military, agreed. They gave him some clearances. They let him build some equipment at his own expense and build some of those orbiting hotels for the stuff they got going up in outer space in low Earth orbit, and but he never got to get any of the real cool briefings that he thought he was going to get. So he's had second thoughts about it. And when his friend Harry Reid retired from the Senate, they cooked up this deal where they were going to be the UFO disclosures, and they were going to find out what's really going on. And somehow they got that 2004 videotape from the Kitty Hawk that shows the flying Tic Tac and the flying blob, which shows absolutely nothing. It was so ridiculous. But they put those out to the public and say, look, we got a flying Tic Tac. It's obviously extraterrestrials.
You know, I got a question. I have a question from a viewer. They asked, do you know anything about Jordan Maxwell's work, and is it real?
I think a lot of it is. I haven't studied it. I haven't really studied it closely. I do know that several years ago he got really screwed, and somebody had made him an offer to do something, and he lost all control of all his work.
Oh, man.
And that's about all I know of Jordan. I've met him a couple times, but I have really not has studied any of his work. But I would say that probably some of it's pretty good.
What is he like in real life? You said you met him a couple of times. What type of person does he come across as being?
Well, yeah, just a normal person, we didn't talk very much. I think the very last time I met him was at the UFO conference in San Jose in 2005, but I haven't seen him since.
Okay. Okay. So, what about your opinion on Zacharias Stitchin? Is his work founded in any reality? I mean, is there a planet Nairubu, the 10th planet, basically a dwarf star? Is it floating around out there?
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. I don't know whether it's called Nibiru or not, but like I say, there's 40 planets out there, and there's certainly room for one to be called Nibiru. But whether it's orbits close to Earth and whether people come from there, I don't know. Obviously, of all these 40 planets, there are at least several civilizations on each planet, and on each of those 40 planets, they have several moons, and there's civilizations on those moons. So there's so many people out there and so many extraterrestrials out there. It's absolutely unbelievable, but we're not supposed to know any of that stuff.
Well, John.
And of course, NASA does their best to keep it a secret. And the way NASA came into being actually was towards the end of World War II, both Germany and the U.S. were trying to build an atomic bomb.
Yes.
Now, the U.S. was working in Los Alamos, and they could build everything for the atomic bomb. They could build the initiator, they could build the insides, they could build everything, except they couldn't make the plutonium. And whereas over in Germany, they could not make the initiator or the insides of the bomb or anything else, but they could make the plutonium.
There you go.
So they had several thousands of plutonium, and when it got to the last 3 months of World War II, and Germany knew they were going to lose, they came to the United States and they said, "Look, we know that you need the plutonium to finish your bomb, so you can bomb Japan. So what we'd like to do is offer you 3 or 4 pounds of plutonium, and in return, we want you to allow 4,000, at least 4,000 of our Nazi SS troops and scientists into the United States and give them full citizenship and no questions asked." And so we agreed to that, and that was called Operation Paperclip.
Yeah.
And it was run by John Foster Dulles, who was Secretary of State, Alan Dulles, his brother, who was head of the CIA, and Eleanor Dulles, who was their sister, who was head of the U.S. Berlin desk. And between the three of them, they let in the 4,000 Nazis, who immediately started taking all of the U.S. companies. Now, the first thing they did is they took over NACA, N-A-C-A, and it became NASA, National Air and Space Administration, and there have been Nazis at the head of that ever since then. They took over Bell Helicopter. As a matter of fact, one of the head Nazis called me when I first got into UFOs, asked if I knew who he was, and we never did talk very much about it, but the whole Vietnam War was strictly to sell helicopters.
What?
And it was all strictly to sell helicopters, and that was to make money for the Nazi groups. The space missions, Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo. Excuse me. Those space programs, the $40 billion, they needed the $40 billion for their low Earth orbiting weapons program. It had nothing to do with exploring the moon. Nobody went to the moon. It was all bullshit. And they used that money. And right now, in orbit, there's so much stuff you wouldn't believe it. For one thing, there's 15 DEWs, which are direct energy systems, direct energy weapons. And one or more of them was used to destroy the World Trade Center. It wasn't aircraft flying into the buildings. It was the direct energy weapons flying from space. And that's why they were able to reduce 930,000 tons of concrete and steel into dust 80 microns in diameter. And that was all that dust floating down the streets of Manhattan when you see that video, that film
Yes.
of the people running down the street and a big cloud of dust behind them. That was all the dust of the concrete and steel that had been reduced to 80 microns by our direct energy weapons. And not only do we have that, but we have orbiting laboratories and manufacturing plants. Just the other day, the Navy released a picture of their newest submarine called the USS Colorado, and had a picture of this nice submarine out there, and said it was had all kinds of new developments on it, but didn't tell you any of what the new developments were. But I'll tell you what the new developments were. Is number one, they are now using fusion engines, which before, we used atomic reactors, which were fission-based. Now we use fusion engines, and the public is told that fusion engines won't be practical for another decade or so, which is bullshit. We've been using them for 10 years or so, and the advantage of fusion engines are they're 1/10 the size and 10 times the power.
Wow.
And they use those on the USS Colorado, and also the USS Colorado and other ships, other aircraft carriers, use D.D. Now that's the letter D, and then a dot, and then D, D.D. And that's a material that's fabricated in orbit in our orbiting manufacturing plants. And what it is, it's a very thin, very strong material, stronger than titanium or steel, and much, much lighter. And it's able to carry an electrical charge. And what happens is when you use it as the hull on a ship, on a fast attack ship, by sending a small electrical charge to the hull material, it keeps the ocean, the sea, approximately 3 to 7 meters away from the hull, which means that there's no drag, which means that the speed is almost fantastic. I mean, they go almost over 100 knots through the water. And as you know, normally hulls are limited to, the formula is 1.34 times the square root of the water line of the watercraft. And that's the limiting speed of hull-based watercraft. But since there is no water line, because the water is being held away from the surface of the boat, there is no limit to the speed other than what the power can produce. And not only that, they have advanced propellers to a very, very advanced technology, but now they use what's referred to as magnetohydrodynamics. If you've ever seen the picture that was called The Hunt for Red October,
yes,
the Russians allegedly had a magnetohydrodynamic drive that they called a caterpillar drive, and that's true. That happened. Now, it didn't happen as early as that movie. The movie was just guessing. But now they do have that. And what it is the way that they use the propulsive effect of water through a tube, I think it's 32 inches in diameter, with such force that it gives them unbelievable speed. And they use that on a new submarine. It's called a fast attack submarine. It's used for SEAL delivery. It's about 70 feet long. It's it's used just to take SEAL teams to their destinations of operation. It has a 12 SEAL team lockout, which means that they can go anywhere and at any depth and let the SEAL teams out. The way they're able to flood that container on the ship. And it's operated by a crew of 9. and it has 3 ROVs. Now, ROVs are remote operated vehicles, and this fast attack submarine has 3 of them. One is airborne, one floats on the water, and one is submersible. And those 3 ROVs are used in the different missions that they take this submarine on. And they haven't announced a submarine. All they've announced is back almost 20 years ago, they announced an advanced SEAL delivery unit that was carried on top of.
Oh shit, we lost them. What the fuck? Shit. Hold on, folks. I gotta get them back on.
Hello?
Yeah, sorry about that, John.
Yeah, what was that, the Navy?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so that SEAL delivery unit is operational now, and I've got a picture of it, or a drawing of it, on my Facebook page. So just go to John Lear Facebook, and you'll see a picture of it. And also, I made a little drawing of what D.D looks like.
I got another question from a viewer. They want to know: do other extraterrestrial life forms out there on the other 39 planets that's in our solar system, do they know about us? You know, or they informed about us, not like how we're not informed about them?
Yeah, they know all about us, and we're kind of like a zoo. They take ships on exploratory ships, and they take pleasure ships around to view Earth and the weird people that live on Earth and fight all the time. And we're kind of like a zoo that they look at. So yeah, they know all about us.
When you say zoo, that reminds me of like on Planet of the Apes, the one when they had the zoo and they had the humans in the zoo on display and stuff. That's what it reminds me.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what it reminds me of, a zoo.
Yeah.
But it's just amazing, like, you know, like how they just, like, I don't understand why they won't let the public know about all of this stuff. It just, I get the whole.
Because we're supposed to
Go ahead.
to concentrate on, and that's why they don't let us know.
Yeah. I just think it's.
Anyway, it's close to an hour now.
Yeah. Are you good, or you want to keep going, or are you good?
I'm kind of running out of gas.
Okay, John. We appreciate you coming on the show.
Call anytime.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Lear dropped some valuable information. You know, don't take his word for it. Do your own research. Come to your own conclusion. We got some exciting guests coming up on the show in May. If you ain't checked out Special Report, you need to get over to True Powers Minds on YouTube and check out Special Report, or you can see the rerun episode over here on Dimebag TV. But if you want to catch it live, you need to go to True Powers Minds.
Yes, I know John had to go. I know he's running out of gas.
I
just want to say, John is an awesome man, and we're really honored to have him on. And not only that, we're honored to have all you supporters and viewers, people supporting the show. If you feel like donating to the show, it's P.O. Box 133, DeSoto, Missouri 63020.
Or go to patreon.com/DimebagTV. If you want to see shows like Special Report and the other morning show and a lot of other things that we got coming down the pipe,
Yes.
go over to Patreon and support us too.
Join me on True Powers Mind live special report. Next week, I'll give you an update. I will have Dr. Jacqueline Badalora on special report. It will be in the morning, I believe around 11 a.m. Central Time. So it's going to be an exciting report. Hopefully you can enjoy me or at least leave messages so I can ask to get doctor on your behalf. But this has been the Other Morning Show because I'm freezing my ass off out here in the cold. I'm True Powers Mind.
I'm Don Bag Doily.
Peace.
And we out.